Namaskar. Friends, we have learned that the aim of yoga, or the aim of all practices in yoga, is to attain the steadiness of mind, is to purify the mind, is to gain the clarity of mind, so that we can concentrate, we can contemplate, we can meditate. And this is what we have learned in all the discourses. Relating to this, the speaker would like to introduce a beautiful story that is taken from one of the most important Upanishads, that is Kathopanishad. These Upanishads are the end parts of the Vedas, and they contain profound wisdom, and this wisdom was captured in the state of intuition by the sages in the ancient times of this land. And mostly this wisdom was given to the sages in the form of revelations. And we have so many Upanishads, but only 11 are considered to be most important. And Kathopanishad is one such. There is a story in this Upanishad, and this story has a great relevance to our context in this discourse on yoga. The articulation of yoga is first found in the Kathopanishad, much earlier than Patanjali came and introduced the yoga called Ashtanga Yoga. As we have learned that these Upanishads contain profound wisdom, and this wisdom is pure, and this wisdom was rendered in the form of tales. One such tale is found in the Kathopanishad. And in this tale, we find the reference to yoga. And we understand that how yoga was introduced in those days. In the ancient times of this land, the sages used to conduct yajnas, the sacrificial rites. And these yajnas were conducted to please gods, for which various kinds of foods were prepared as oblations. And these yajnas were conducted in order to propitiate gods. And these yajnas were conducted mostly by the sages and the kings. And in there lived a sage by name Vajashrava. And Vajashrava had decided to conduct a yajna for which the sages, scholars, and kings were invited. And in those days, the yajna, after performing yajna, at the end, the performer must distribute wealth as charity to the poor people. And in those days, one's wealth was calculated in terms of the number of cows that one possessed or owned. Vajashrava had a handsome teenage son by name Nachiketha. Many of you must be familiar with this tale. But then the speaker would like to take this tale and show you how yoga was introduced, the philosophy of yoga was first introduced in those days, even much earlier than Patanjali. So Vajashrava had conducted the yajna, and after the yajna, he was about to distribute the cows, because we have just now learned that in those days one's riches were measured in terms of the number of cows that one owned. And Vajashrava started distributing the cows, but these cows were very weak, poor in their health, skinniest. And Vajashrava had a son, a young lad by name Nachiketha. Nachiketha observed, he keenly observed his father's way of distributing these weak cows to the poor people. Having seen that these cows were very weak, physically weak, Nachiketha was stunned. And he wondered how his father could distribute such weak cows to the people and boast himself of that he was a great sage of charity, and he was charitable, kind. So he was a bit agitated and also angered, and he went straight to his father and in anger asked his father, "To whom shall you offer me? The sage was very busy in distributing the cows, but Nachiketha persisted. Annoyed, the sage Vajrashravan said to Lord Yama, I would offer you. Nachiketha was taken aback. How he could be offered to the Lord Yama, the god of death? Am I so inferior to all the scholars and sages who had gathered there? Am I so weak? Oh, he questioned himself. But in those days, the son would never resist or oppose his parents' wishes or commands. So he took the entire command given by his father and then sought his permission and went straight to the abode of Lord Yama. On reaching the abode of Yama, the young lad Nachiketha found that Lord Yama had gone on an errand. So young Nachiketha was determined. He wanted to know the ultimate truth, and he wanted to learn this from the god of death. So he waited at the gates of the abode for 3 days and 3 nights. And after these 3 days and 3 nights, Lord Yama returned to his abode and found this young lad waiting at the gate. He was so pleased seeing the young lad having waited for 3 days and nights. So Lord Yama asked the young lad to go for 3 boons, that he was ready to grant 3 boons. And one of the boons, the last boon, the young lad asks, My Lord, some say that the human body survives the death. But some hold a different view, a contrary view. They do not accept this view that we survive the death of the body. I want to know what happens after the death of this body. Where will I go? What happens to this body? And the Lord Yama was taken aback because Nachiketha was too young to ask such boon. And Nachiketha asked Lord Yama to teach that wisdom, that knowledge, so that he would be enlightened. And it was here Lord Yama taught the young lad the philosophy of yoga. The philosophy of yoga was first articulated here in this context when the conversation had taken place between the young lad Nachiketha and the god of death, that is Lord Yama. Lord Yama here, while giving exposition on the philosophy of death, gave a beautiful analogy of this body. And Lord Yama compares this body with a chariot. The whole body, human body, is compared with a chariot. The horses are like sense organs. The bridle is the mind. The charioteer who holds the bridle and controls the horses is intellect. And within this chariot-like body, there lives the Atma. This is the analogy that Lord Yama gives. In this tale, we find two kinds of philosophies. One is the philosophy of death, another is philosophy of yoga. Let's not worry about the philosophy of death that was taught by Lord Yama to this young lad Nachiketha. That is altogether a different topic. But Lord Yama teaches the philosophy of yoga. In other words, this tale has that implication, and it contains the philosophy of yoga. And this analogy, comparing this human body with the chariot, has a great relevance to the present context of our discourse. We have been talking about how to steady the mind, how to attain that state of calmness, how to achieve that state of tranquility, that state of equilibrium. That's our concern. That is the ultimate aim of yoga. And therefore, this particular analogy has that relevance. And hence the speaker has brought this particular tale here in this context to make you understand how important the human mind is. That human mind is the center of all our living. And it is the mind that matters much more than this body. It is the mind that decides everything in the world. It determines all actions. It shapes your destiny, your character, and so on. And not the body. Of course, there is one kind of yoga called Hatha Yoga, which deals only with the body. But there is Raja Yoga, which deals with the mind. But both are not separate. Both have to be integrated. Both body and mind have to be integrated. We need both Hatha Yoga and Raja Yoga. The Hatha Yoga is mainly concerned with the body and Raja Yoga is with the mind. They are like two sides of the same coin. They must go hand in hand. We need these two kinds of yoga and we need to master these two. We need to master both body and mind. But mind matters much more than this body. And therefore, the analogy has that greater relevance in this particular context. Now let me explain this analogy further. The sense organs are the horses. The bridle is the mind. And who is the charioteer in this chariot? The intellect, that is Buddhi. If the charioteer holds the bridle, the reins, and controls the horses, if he lets loose the bridle, the horses will go astray. They go in different directions and the chariot will get derailed on the road. So the control of the sense organs depends on the intellect. The intellect here is very crucial. What is the function of intellect? There are two functions that the intellect performs. One is it questions, it reasons out, it investigates, it interrogates, it probes deep into the matter, into the phenomenon. It questions everything. It does not accept the phenomenon as it is. Unless this particular faculty of mind is satisfied, is convinced, the intellect will not accept anything in the world. So its property is questioning. Therefore, where there is questioning, there emanates knowledge. There is bound to be knowledge. A great amount of knowledge in the whole world is the outcome of this intellect. All that knowledge we see that is staked in libraries, in the universities, is the outcome of this intellect. This intellect functions in that way. It questions the phenomena and then brings out the enormous information. So this is the one function that intellect has given so much of knowledge in the whole world. And this knowledge has one property that is utilitarian. It has the functional utility that with this knowledge we survive in this world. We can survive this body and mind, this organism. We need to sustain this body, this organism, and how to sustain this organism only by means of doing something. And therefore, we acquire some knowledge, and that knowledge is skill, and we go and render that knowledge, sell that skill, for which we get some money, and with which we lead our life, and we sustain this body, this organism. So this is what the intellect does. There is another function that is very vital for our context of discussion. Now this function is that intellect has the discriminatory power. It has the power to discriminate, distinguish good from bad, moral from immoral, right from wrong, honest from dishonest, and so on. It has that power. And we can exercise that intellect, that function of discrimination. Now, when we use this function, we can control the sense organs. Not the first one. The first function is just to bring out the knowledge, the truth of the creation, the truth of existence, the truth of matter, the nature of matter, and so on. But the second function that intellect performs is crucial for our discussion. Now, that is discrimination. It discriminates, it distinguishes, it separates, it differentiates between right and wrong. So we can exercise that power of discrimination and control the sense organs. As the speaker has already said, that the involvement of sense organs in the external world of attractions and repulsions is the cause for creating samskaras and vasanas and karmic impulses that get accumulated in the subconscious state, and which is responsible for causing vikshepas, disturbances in the mind. And therefore, our mind is not steady. We cannot focus, we cannot contemplate, we cannot meditate. So therefore, the too much involvement of sense organs in the external world can be controlled by exercising this discriminatory power of the intellect. The intellect has such power, and we can use that intellect in this way and exercise control over the sense organs so that we will not indulge too much in the external world of attractions and repulsions. This way, the mind can be steadied. When there is no too much involvement in the external world, it will not create more samskaras and vasanas. And when there are no samskaras and vasanas that get accumulated due to our involvement in the external world, then the disturbances can be arrested. Disturbances will not arise. And this is what is known as viveka. Intellect has that power. And we can use intellect in this direction, in this way, and see that we will not involve too much in the external world. We can, before we involve in the external world, in any action, we need to think. We need to exercise this power of discrimination, and see whether it is beneficial to our living, whether this action that you are going to perform is useful for the benefit of the humanity, for the Loka Kalyana. And once you use this intellect in this way, you will not involve in this external world too much and perform too many actions, too many unnecessary actions, and you will involve only in such actions which are absolutely necessary for your living, for your survival. So this is the tale of Nachiketha, with which you must be very familiar. But many of us do not know that Lord Yama had introduced this philosophy of yoga. So the articulation of the philosophy of yoga is to be found first in this Upanishad called Kathopanishad. So let us take this tale to our heart. The implication, the symbolic meaning, the symbolic significance of this tale, especially the last boon granted by Lord Yama to this young lad Nachiketha, in the form of comparing this human body with a chariot, and the charioteer within this chariot like body is intellect, and that intellect is very important for us, and we need to use the other aspect of the intellect, the other vital function of the intellect, and that function we have just now learned, the power of exercising discrimination. When we use this intellect in this way, we can exercise control over the sense organs, and we can arrest the Viksha powers, because we do not involve too much in the external world, because there is a control that comes from the intellect, and therefore Viksha powers will not arise, and the steadiness of mind can be achieved. Namaskar.